This is Scott Allen Miller with Sam IT, and today I'm going to talk about job hopping. Now, this is something that comes up a lot for IT professionals, and I mean, non-IT people talk about this kind of stuff too, but not as much as IT people. In IT, this is just how we talk, right? And that's about job hopping. Now, in most fields, people tend to go to a job and stay for a very long time, maybe 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. And maybe at some point at the quarter or halfway point through their careers, they will switch to another job. Now, pre-career, when you're talking about your fast food experience in high school, sure, people jump jobs all the time. It's expected and no one thinks anything of it. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about your career here. Now, in IT, we often hear people talk about, well, you don't want to move jobs too frequently because it'll look bad on your resume, or it's not what you do, or you owe it to your employer to stay for a long time. None of this is true. It may have some true elements, but is not true on its own. So in most fields, so traditionally, let's step back 50 years ago, most people going into normal careers, IT didn't exist, were expected to pretty much take a job with an employer and ride it out for their entire career, or at most to hop employers once during a career span. Employers worked very hard to hire people directly out of college and make good choices at that time and simply live with who they get. Sometimes they would get winners, sometimes they wouldn't. Mostly they would put up with it unless you're just incredibly bad. This has some benefits, but it comes with a lot of negatives too. Employees felt that they could ride out careers forever. They wouldn't have to change employers. It made life very simple, but it also took away their options. Moving to a new city was very hard. Finding new work, should something happen, was relatively hard. It has positives and negatives for everyone. Now, in the modern world, this has shifted a lot. We no longer feel that companies owe it to employees to keep them forever. To keep them as long as they're doing a good job and the company's viable, maybe. But to just keep them no matter what, we don't expect that. No one expects it. So companies have begun hiring and laying off much more frequently than they did 50 years ago or even 20 years ago. And it's just accepted, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that model. It just changes how we have to think. We unfortunately carry forward some of the thought processes from 50 years ago where we simply expect people to be loyal and companies to be loyal and everyone to stay together. This isn't the real world. It's not how it actually works. What is now happening is that people expect to shift jobs regularly all throughout their career, and that's fine. In IT, however, it's much more dramatic because unlike normal jobs where you can normally move up some amount of ladder within your organization, especially if you're in the core operations, IT rarely has that opportunity except for the largest of enterprises. So, in order to move up, IT tends to have to move laterally. When you're at the beginning of your career, moving laterally might be needed every few months or year rather than every 5 years or every 10 years. This creates a problem because a lot of people perceive a need to give 5 years or 10 years to a single company as some kind of odd, just they need it or something, and that's not real. That is a carryover from another time. You do not owe a company many years of your life simply because they decided to employ you. You worked out the amount that you were being paid for the amount of work you were doing. You deserve to give them 2 weeks notice or whatever you've worked out, but it is not your obligation to stay there and hold on. It's not their obligation to keep you, and it's not your obligation to stay. They are not going to keep you when you don't make sense. They are not going to keep you just because they hired you and they feel they have to. That isn't how it works. And you have to not cripple your own career thinking that you need to do that for them. And especially as the employee, your ramifications on the company that you stay with or leave is much smaller than their ramifications for keeping or dropping you. It's much easier for them to hire someone because they can relocate someone to their location. They have a little bit more to offer across the board. So it's very much in their favor for this system of obligations to exist in some way. With IT, because we need to move between roles so frequently in order to move up in our careers, we're stuck with a situation where if we decide to stay at a company for 5 years, anywhere in the first half of our career, we are very likely holding ourselves back dramatically. We have a problem where there simply isn't an opportunity for us to move up and get the experience that we need unless we move to another company. So we can't let that feeling that we need to have long-term single companies on our resume hold us back, because it will hold us back a lot. Being free to jump from company to company will let you, just like being free to change locations, lets you move up much more quickly. You can challenge yourself faster, prove yourself faster, increase your income and your title faster. You can show more growth, more breadth. You have more opportunities to bring more to those companies. Not only is it good for you, it is often good for them. Those companies get new blood injected into them. They get new ideas. It helps you from stagnating, and the more that you refuse to stagnate, the more you're able to keep the companies that you support from stagnating. Everyone actually benefits. There's this culture, mostly coming out of universities, that really pushes the longevity factor in jobs. Do not become subjected to that. It is true that you don't want to job hop, say, in the 3-month range. Once you're past your first couple jobs, you do want it to become a little bit longer. You want enough time to have done important things, enough time for them to remember you, enough time for you to have made a difference and be ready to hand off to the next person. And the more senior you become, the longer those pieces will be. But as you work through your career, early on, it is fine to hop jobs very often, and at the middle of your career, occasionally, and by the end of your career, once in a while. But never be afraid to hop when the right time has come, because once that time has come, every bit that you hold off, you're giving up other opportunities, both individually and as a general career trajectory. Thanks for joining me. Remember to like and subscribe, and comment below how job hopping has helped you, hurt you, how you feel about it, what you've been told about it, and let's discuss.